All right. First, I'd like to just congratulate Cleveland. They're a hell of a basketball team. They're going to be on probably a long run right now, but they're well coached. They have a group that fits and plays the right way. So we were humbled, but they had so much to do with a lot of how we looked. None of us would have guessed, the series would have gone this way coming out of our two play-ins, and even how we competed in the first two games, but they just took it to another level. Obviously, we didn't play well, and we didn't meet any kind of level from there, but they left us behind these last two games. I'll be able to separate, this. Because this is, a group that it's a shame that, will be remembered for these two home games here and taking a 4-0 sweep. Because this group showed a lot of character and resilience. It was a fun group to be around, especially those last 8 weeks of the season while we were just grinding, struggling, grinding, and then playing our best basketball at the end of the season when it mattered. It was a fun group to be around. I felt fully alive, as alive as I've felt, in a while in a regular season. It's a big credit to this group and how connected this group was, how this group was really playing for each other. But it'll be a story that nobody really cares about because of how it ended, and I get it. But I feel for the locker room. This group has put a lot into this season, and to be able to overcome a lot of things, and then to have, those two play-in games where most people would say, what's the big celebration? Mediocrity, but it was a lot of fun. When we won in Atlanta and flying to Cleveland, it was just a lot of fun on that plane ride. Really felt like this group was connected. I wish it was, potentially, we had somebody else, just to extend this, but Cleveland's a hell of a basketball team.
You touched on it somewhat there, Spo, but how do you make sense of the whole year? I mean, there were some highs, there were some lows, there were the 10-game streak and all that stuff. I mean, it's just...
There's a lot of lows, probably more lows, but the thing that I'll always remember about this group was that all the adversity that we fought through it, to end up playing our best basketball. We were a couple of plays here or there from going 8 straight, possibly 10 straight, go 10 down and then 10 straight. Like, it's that close. It would have been a great story. But more importantly, it's, this league and this association, a long NBA season, you're always given that opportunity for that gift of adversity and, to have a group that responded in the way that you wanted a group to respond, to become more connected, to develop more resolve, to try to overcome, things. It was a fun experience. I think I became better from it. I hope the players became better from it. But damn, it was humbling. This series was humbling. These last two games were embarrassing. But Cleveland's also a very good team. We won whatever we won. They won 65. We're as irrational as we usually are, thinking that we have a chance to win this series. And they showed us why, we weren't ready, for that.
Last year's playoff series against Boston kind of set the tone for Tyler's offseason. What lessons do you think Tyler could take from this series and these last?
We'll get to that. Like, all these experiences are super important for all of our guys. I had a great game too, but it didn't. We just couldn't get it over the top to win. They schemed him, which is going to happen for the rest of his career. He's a competitor, so he loves that kind of challenge. And he'll figure it out. He'll have a great offseason. I don't even want to think about that right now, but I know Tyler. I know what he's about. He's going to work, and he'll come back better from this.
it's no doubt been a hectic season for Bam and Tyler leading the group, whether it be roster changes in the middle of the season and stuff like that. You mentioned it. Can this sort of humbling loss like this build character for them going into the future, especially?
They already have the competitive character, but these kind of losses, and getting swept, it can motivate you. Those guys have great competitive character, and a drive. This league is tough. You got to be about it. Those two guys are about it, and it's not like a bunch of teams have figured it out. I'm looking around, and it's like every playoff series is there's a lot of parity right now. This is embarrassing, but there's going to be a bunch of teams that are out, like with us too, that have big aspirations. But they'll get to work. I just mentioned Tyler, but Bam, is the ultimate winner. He's going to figure it out too, and collectively when we get, back together, these lessons for the young guys that had an experience in this, in the two play-ins in this playoff series, will become better, from it. There's no way to fast track it unless you go through it, and sometimes there's pain, from that. I said it with a couple of our young guys. We needed the 25-year-old version now. Can't do that, obviously. You got to go through the experiences to get that. But I really enjoyed this group. I enjoyed the young guys. I enjoyed the vets. To push through, and everybody felt the same way as I do. It's embarrassing, but I think everybody felt this will be at least the regular season and the two play-ins, something that the guys will remember, moving forward.
You said it, I think, during the losing streak. These are lessons nobody really wants to have to learn, or the challenges you don't want to have to overcome. But what you were just saying with the young guys, what is this experience, what does this postseason experience specifically look like in terms of building on it tangibly moving forward?
Yeah, we'll find out. But, we're not going to change our standard, right? But I also, understand that, Tyler and Bam have taken on the mantle, and it's a slightly different role than they've had, previously. And, you got to work through that. Our young guys, I always forget, Nico, how old he is. I just expect him to be 25 and 26, and I will continue to treat him that. Next year I'll expect him to be 30, and expect him you were off for the 6 weeks before this, so what? Be ready, and the last year's playoff experience was really important for him. The two international experiences were really important for him. He's grown so much. I can step back and recognize that. Kel'el has grown so much. When we drafted him, I couldn't maybe possibly say I expected him to play, 60-plus games and start how many ever games he did, and then start in the playoffs. He just turned 21 in this playoff series. So he played against a center that's played 500 more games than him, and has had playoff series where he's had whatever kind of feeling about a disappointment or whatever that motivated him for the next year. We'll have, Pella played a bunch of minutes in this series. Those will be important things moving forward, but, as an organization, we're going to look at this and say this is unacceptable. We got to get to another level. But you can balance. Multiple things can be true. And guys got a lot better. Guys got fast-tracked and a lot better. That really helped us in the two play-ins just to get in this. And what I loved about this group is how badly they wanted to get in this dance. And that's something, moving forward.
You spoke pregame about Kel'el and the value of playoffs, and then you pulled him 3 minutes in, didn't put him back until late. What happened with Kel'el at the start, and why did you make that decision?
I mean, it was just a quick run. It's not necessarily an indictment on one player, but it was, these are fundamental lessons that the thing I like about Kel'el is he has a coachability to him. He has an ambition to him. He's going into a playoff series where, yes, he's watched games and he's watched all the film, but he hasn't really been in something to really know. He's playing against a very experienced center, and I don't know how many. I think he's been in 21 playoff games or whatever, Allen. But like I said, he's played 500 more games. But all these little lessons, creating a lead, like how to get the ball, trying to run a play, pick and roll coverages, and then the adjustments, all the little nuances that happen in a playoff series. It's different than the regular season. And until you go through it, you don't really understand it. I wish this could have been more games because I want even more experience, more lessons, all that stuff, but it didn't happen that way.
You were talking about that plane ride after the play-in. You've competed, you've had all these huge moments over the years, but how important are those moments, just looking back over the course of a career or just building a team?
Yeah, you want, something to matter. This didn't matter the way we wanted it to, ultimately, because we're hardwired to compete for, the ultimate prize. But that was something that was hard-earned. Can't pay for it. Can't get it on Amazon. A group came together, had a bunch of adversity, a bunch of losses. It could have been much easier to, just to fall apart. But instead, like I said, come together and not look at it cynically. It was more viewed as an opportunity. Hey, we can go do this. Now we're going to have to do this the hard way and win 2 games on the road, be the first team that had done it. But he had a team that rallied around that energy. And we had those 2 wins, and it was just a fun plane ride. It's a plane ride that I'll remember, the rest of my career. And that's why we're irrationally thinking hey, this is going to continue. There's nothing to suggest in our prep, these last 2 practices and shoot-arounds, that the 2 games would have ended up like this. There's nothing. And I'm going to spend all summer, over-analyzing everything, but there's no way I could have predicted that. And it shouldn't have been like this. I know that for damn sure. It would probably been 2 L's, but not like this. But Cleveland is a damn good team.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, thank you.
Locker room's open.